All right, so we're gonna try something here. I'm gonna post a video. It's gonna be my first video. I'm gonna narrate here a little bit while I drive. My name is David Borman. I am a native Texan and been living out here in California now since November 2011. I want to say that's about right. And oh man, there's been a lot of wacky stuff going on out here. I remember before we moved out here, my wife and I looked at each other and we were adamant. We said the one thing we would never own or have in our possession, our driver's license with a California address. And I think it was about a year later, I think God probably looked down and said, "Ha, I've got something in store for you." And it's been quite an experience. It moved us out here. I got a software engineering job, probably my first real software engineering job. And it's been a blessing. I learned a lot. I've been laid off from that job since. Back in 2015, 2016 was a challenge. We're still working through a challenge. We had to sell our home, and those things can really take a toll on your finances. And we'd owned that home. I don't think we'd even owned it for a full 2 years before we had to sell it. Fortunately, we were able to sell it, not at a loss. We got out of there with just a little bit more than what we needed to actually move. And we're still here in California, but during that time of owning a home and having a relatively calm experience, until I got laid off, I'd done a lot of studying, and I went on to reconcile our founding documents with biblical principle, which is really going to be where I take these videos. And I'm going to give a brief overview of those, and I'm going to start right out of the gate by listing, enumerating these inalienable rights that we are told that we have in the Declaration of Independence. Now, before I get into the validity and veracity of the Declaration of Independence, because it's not the Constitution. Oh my! What would we have if we didn't have the Declaration of Independence? That'll be a question to answer for another time. But just so you know, our natural rights, those affirmed by the Declaration of Independence to be bestowed upon us by our Creator. 7, count them, 7 natural rights. Oh, there's got to be more than that. There's got to be more than that. I can do so much more. No. One thing. There is one requirement for these natural rights. I'll get to that later. Number 1, we have the right to faithfully pursue the worship of God. Okay. Before you can object, you're going to hear all 7 of the rights. But the God that I'm referring to is capital G, capital G-O-D, God, Jehovah, from the Judeo-Christian Bible. Yes, the same God as the one talked about who called Abraham to be the father of what the Israelites would recognize as Father Abraham. That God, not Allah. He's not Allah. He's not Buddha. He's not anybody else. Capital G God, El Shaddai. Can I make it any more clear for you who I'm talking about? Okay, so we have the right to faithfully pursue the worship of God. That's number one. Why number one? There are 2 commandments directly dealing with the worship of God. Check them out. Exodus chapter 20. Okay, number 2. You have the right to live your life unharmed by another person. That means, hey, thou shalt not murder. Okay. What about other forms of harm? There's emotional abuse. There's, other forms of abuse. But we have to be careful when we start saying, well, calling somebody names, that's abusive. That's causing them harm. Yeah, you got to be careful when you start getting there. God didn't say, don't call people names. He didn't. He said, love your neighbor as yourself. So, number 3, you have the right to own property. Okay? You have the right to, number 4, you have the right to carve out a livelihood. Have a job. You got to provide for yourself, right? You got to eat. So you have the right to provide for yourself, having a livelihood. So there's the 4 there. So let's see. I've got 3 more. Number 5. You have the right to speak the truth. Thou shalt not lie. It kind of infers that, hey, you do have the right to speak truth. So the flip side of that, number 6, you have the right to know the truth. So that means that you are entitled by your right, this authority given to us, bestowed upon us by God. You have the authority to inquire about what others tell you. I would even go so far as to say you have the responsibility to ensure that what people are telling you is true. Why? Because you don't want to go off half knowledgeable, half-baked, ignorant, and start telling other people things that someone else told you, CNN, and said, oh, well, this is true. It came from CNN, or it came from Fox, or it came from him. No. Use your intelligence. God gave you that too. Use your intelligence and inquire. Number 7. God gave us free will. Therefore, you have the right to exercise your free will, and to what that means is you have the right to enforce any of those other rights, 1 through 6. So let's apply a little bit of logic to that. I said, number 1, you have the right to faithfully pursue the worship of God. Well, what about Islam? They have the right. Well, wait a minute. We're talking about natural rights, not civil. Natural, God-ordained rights. Therefore, the worship of Allah, Muhammad, somebody else, Buddha, whatever. God didn't say, if you choose not to worship me, I'll give you the right to worship someone else. He didn't say that. But he also didn't force us to worship him. He didn't force us. He gave us the choice. So in order to equalize between one who worships, Jehovah and one who doesn't, God said, you can choose not to. But that doesn't mean it's okay. It just means you can choose not to. So you see how that works. You have the right to choose not to worship God. You have the right to choose not to have a job. You have the right to choose not to own any property or tell the truth or to discover the truth. You can choose not to choose, but guess what? You still make a choice. I have to thank Rush and Geddy Lee for those lyrics. When you choose not to choose, you still made a choice. How about that? So there you go. That's kind of an overview of natural rights, where they come from, and I'm going to dive into these a little bit more as we go. But that's the end of this first video. I'll have this posted here, and hopefully I'll be able to throw up a few more here, and we'll go over these a little bit more one by one. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. God bless you.